So the focus today is on using blocks and moving away from this idea that blocks, as one of many props that we can use in yoga, using blocks is not just for beginners. There seems to be a misconception often in the yoga world that if you're using blocks, it's because you're not strong enough, you're not good enough, you're newer to the practice, and you need to be using them to help you, to make it easier. And actually, I want to kind of break that misconception a little bit with this session today. So my focus is on using blocks to strengthen the practice. And in strengthening the practice, I mean strengthening our physical bodies, which then gives us the opportunity to make better shapes as a first priority. But really, when we can get stronger in our bodies, we're actually trying to get stronger physically in such a sense that we've got balance between front and back body, side body, inside body. So balance generally for good posture for all of our organs and systems within us to work well. Okay, so that's always my goal. So we use blocks, or many teachers and many practitioners, many personal trainers will use blocks as a resistance tool. So for some of the common moves that you'll do in the gym, using a block can help to add a level of resistance. They can also be a really, really good tool for strength training. In the yoga world, in personal training, for runners, for athletes, when they're prepping themselves for different aspects of their bodies that need to be strong. So I want us to think about them as something that we can use to utilize our strength. And I use them often in my vinyasa classes in particular to isolate specific muscles in the warm-up part of the practice that gets the muscle used to firing up and switching on. And so that the student knows how it feels to switch that muscle on. Sometimes we're working with muscles that we don't use very often, or we don't fire up in the right way. And we're not aware of that because we're moving through the practice so quickly that we don't have time to really explore what side of the body is doing all of the work. And when we isolate things from side to side and slow things down with the use of props, we can really identify our strengths and our weaknesses. Okay, so I've broken today's session down into 3 main areas. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to use blocks to strengthen the core. And when I talk about core, I'm actually, for the sake of this discussion, meaning the front side of our core, okay? Now, I don't like to think about the core as just being the front side of the body, so I also have a section that's referring to the back of the body. But just to be clear, when I use the word core today, I mean front body, okay? And then the second section we're going to look at is how can we strengthen glutes, so these muscles on the outside of our bottom, adductor muscles, inner thigh muscles, and hamstrings. And these muscles often work together rather than in isolation to make different things happen in the body. So we're going to talk about how we can strengthen those areas, or how we can build awareness on strengthening those areas. And then the third area we're going to look at is the back body, the back of the spine, and shoulders. Now remember, the shoulder blades are bones that sit on top of our rib cage, and they only move by our arms moving, of course, but the muscles that help those arm bones to move, and the muscles in between the shoulder blades helping them to move. So we're going to be looking at how we can use the blocks to strengthen those areas as well. And then I've added in one, maybe 2 little kind of extras, which is kind of a whole body thing that we can use for the blocks. We'll start with that one. And then looking at the quads and hip flexors, so this area here, okay? So here's my 2 blocks. I'm going to get started with the core aspect of using the blocks, okay? So some of you might be familiar with this shape. It's called dead bug. I'm more familiar with it from in a gym setting. So some of you might have the same experience here. And my version of doing it is this. So I'm placing a block between my left thigh and elbow. Okay, left thigh and elbow. And that connection point is firing up the muscles in my front body and my obliques, okay? And then dead bug is where you're starting down like this, arm and leg away from each other. And you're squeezing that block in between your elbow and knee. Foot is flexed, so you're a little bit more powerful there. And then you're lifting up and reaching hand and foot together. Shoulders are lifted on both sides. And then you're slowly lowering back down. Okay, so lifting up, hands and toes obviously don't have to touch, and then lowering down. Lifting up, and we want the shoulders and the head and the neck on both sides to be lifted, and then lowering down, okay? And then obviously there's a second side that we're going to do for balance. So elbow and knee and block connect, okay? Left arm, left leg away from each other, and we start to lift shoulders, lifting head, curling up through the center of our core, and then extending and reaching back, okay? So this is what I refer to when I talk about dead bug in class. And this is a really nice way to build quite a lot of heat through the transverse abdominis, rectus abdominis in the core quite nicely, okay? So this is number one. And then there's something that I do that plays around with that as a variation here. So very, very similar. So I'm going to show you this one now. So this time I'm going to lift my left leg, okay? And I'm going to take my right elbow and hold the block in place with my right elbow. And then I'm interlacing my hands behind my head, and I'm lifting both of my shoulders off the floor, and I'm extending right leg up to the sky, okay? So both shoulders stay off the ground. That's the hardest bit for me. And then I'm extending and hovering right foot above the floor. And then inhale, lifting. Exhale, extending and hovering. Inhale, lifting. So this is going to be working the core and psoas, and then lifting. Now it's really key that you're keeping shoulder blades lifted. I could even be doing it more than I am right now, okay? So let's do the other side. Left elbow, connecting with the block and the right thigh. Pushing in hard, right elbow, lifting up, shoulder blade off the ground, left leg lifts. That's your starting position. You're exhaling and reaching away, leg hovers. Inhale, leg lifts, upper back lifted. Exhale, leg hovers. Inhale, slow movements. You could go even slower than I am. And then lifting, okay? So that's getting really nicely into the front core, working the obliques a little bit here as well. And then in a similar way to the dead bug, elbow to knee, hands interlaced behind the head, both shoulders lifted. And now I'm just isolating one side at a time. So I'm lifting up with the right leg, hovering the leg away, keeping lifted. There's no twist aspect to it now. Leg reaching away, inhaling back up, exhale away, leg lifting back up. Okay, and then lowering down, and what's really nice afterwards is a really indulgent full body stretch. Okay, so those are 3 ways in which you can access from a really simple position these muscles in the front of your body. So using the block for strength training. Okay, now another one which I quite like is placing the block in between your thighs. So you can see from this angle I'm squeezing the block in between the thighs, and I'm using cork blocks, which is great for what we're doing, but for one of the shapes we're coming to later it's going to be a little bit more challenging. Foam ones can be nicer. So I'm coming here, I'm going to come into plank position. So I'm starting in tabletop, and then obviously to grip the block between my thighs, my adductor muscles have to be working. So although I've put this into the core category, it also fits into the adductor category as well. So toes are tucking under, and I'm extending my legs away. And by squeezing that block in, it reminds my legs to fire up, okay? So there's a whole lot of action here. It's really easy to forget to use the legs in a plank pose. So when you're trying to remind yourself about how you can use the legs, pushing away through the heels, firing up through the quads, and then using the adductors, the inner thigh muscles, the block is a really nice reminder, because as soon as you drop the block, you know that those muscles switched off, okay? So that's a really nice trick for coming into this one. And then bird dog. These have really strange names, I know. So some of you will be familiar with me teaching this in my class, where we take leg away and opposite hand forward. We obviously get nice and stable in the top of the left foot and right hand, and we're bringing elbow, knee and forehead into center. Okay, so that's the the non-block version. And we're creating more instability on purpose by placing the blocks underneath the knee and the hand. Underneath the, knee and the hand. All right, so our starting position is the same. And now I'm going to reach away. My foot is lifted from the floor. Okay, you can also put it under your foot, or to make it easier, tuck the toes under here. Okay, so you see I'm wobbling a little bit more here. I'm starting easy with the toes tucked under. The exhale, elbow and knee into center. It challenges your core and your ability to balance in a completely different way. Now, if I get brave and lift that foot from the ground, now it's much, much harder for me to come into my position. You can see I have to concentrate a whole lot more, which means that a whole lot more is working, okay? So that can be a really nice way to play with stability as well. When things are unsettled as a base of balance, whether it be for our knee, our hand, our foot, the muscles around that area have to work together to stabilize. Okay, that's their job, is to stabilize and protect the joints. So this is what's happening. Okay, so it's really, really nice. Now I've got down here whole body, so I missed that in the beginning. Let's come to that. And all you need is one block. We're coming to the top of the mat. Block is going to come in between our thighs. Okay, feet are a little bit apart. I'm going to do a sun salutation A. So hands will be at heart center. My inhale is going to lift up. I'm squeezing inner thighs into the block, and I'm exhaling into my forward fold. I could, if I wanted, add a chair pose in. Okay, that's a really nice way to use a block while we're here as well. And then exhale, forward fold. Now I'm going to have to push into the ground and step my way back with little hops to plank. Okay, so I incorporate my plank with my inner thighs gripping the block. Chaturanga. Inhale, we have to go to uplift to maintain the block. And I'm tucking the toes under, and I'm coming into downward facing dog. So again, this reminds me in downward facing dog, another way to use the block is to really, really grip and use the legs. So many of us don't use the legs, and we're dumping into wrists and shoulders. Okay, so I'm going to take my breaths, and then I'm going to soften the knees and hop or step forward. Halfway lift, inhale. Exhale, forward fold. Just for fun, because that's how I like to do things, chair pose. And then Tadasana, okay? Tadasana is another way, obviously, to use it for information's sake. You're pushing down into the feet, gripping through the thighs, reminds you to fire up quads and glutes, bellies in, and then all of the other good things that come with that shape. So palms facing forwards. So this can be a really nice way to practice as well, okay? While I'm here, you can be spread wide in the toes, and you can practice strengthening glutes and calves by lifting up onto the balls of the feet and coming down with the block in between your thighs, okay? Taking it from here. You can also add a little bit more challenge with that, putting the block in between your shins, okay? Finding strength, a lot more wobbly. Particularly for me, I have no calves at all. Heels come down, whee! And as you can see, much more challenging for me, okay? Very skinny here, so I don't have a whole lot of grip. So that's a really nice way to practice. And the sun salutation A is a fantastic way to start. I'll often do a class focused on glutes and inner thigh muscles, using that for the first 10-15 minutes of a class. I will continue to roll out more of these if people let me know that they're interested in them, if it's helpful. And I sprinkle these through my practice. I put them in the warm-up. Sometimes I don't even do yoga. I'll just come to whatever area of my body I'm targeting that day and do the skills and drills. This is what I call these different tips. And then maybe I'll come in and do some sun salutations afterwards. It really depends on how I'm feeling and what time I have, okay? Thank you for joining. If you have any questions, just send me a message, let me know, or type into the screen. But thank you.